The reality is there's a big difference between responsive desire and what you're seeing from your dismissive avoidant wife. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com. I want to clear this up because we talked before in a previous podcast about spontaneous desire and responsive desire. Responsive desire is not excuses for a one-sided relationship. This is actually different than what you may be seeing in your marriage with your dismissive avoidant wife. Responsive desire gets thrown around a lot. In marriage therapy, relationship podcasts, she just has responsive desire. She'll get into the mood if I start the process, if I take the initiative. And that is true. That is a thing. And I'll go into the differences here in just a moment. But that phrase becomes the explanation for everything for a lot of guys. It's the explanation for why she never initiates. It's the explanation of why there's absolutely zero affection towards you, why you're the one always bridging the gap and reaching and putting the emotional relationship on your shoulders. It's the reason that you're saying why sex only happens if you make it happen, because you're told, hey, that's just how my wife is. Don't take it personally. Stop pressuring her. And yes, we talk a lot about pressure, but there's a big difference between someone who is secure and someone who struggles with dismissive avoidant attachment style. And here's where the problem lies. At some point, this reasonable explanation of responsive desire versus spontaneous desire becomes a permanent excuse. Responsive desire has its own container. Dismissive avoidance has its own container. They're very different. They look like they can overlap and be similar, but there is a line where responsive desire ends and dismissive avoidance begins. Confusing the two is what drives us crazy. So let's talk about what responsive desire is. And you'll remember some of this from this earlier podcast. Responsive desire, it's a real thing. Most women, they don't walk around thinking about sex the way men do. It is an actual thing. Desire often shows up after closeness, touch, safety, connection. That part's true. There's a lot of guys that think, well, responsive desire is completely BS. It's just it's an excuse for her not to do anything. Responsive desire does not mean zero initiation forever. It does not mean no affection. It does not mean that she never comes toward you. It does not mean sex is something you must earn. It does not mean that your desire is a problem and you should feel shamed. Healthy responsive desire still has openness. It has reciprocity. It has warmth. It has availability. It has curiosity. It looks to your woman like, I'm not there yet, but I am so receptive to you and I'm open to you. That's the key. The openness. Here's where guys get confused. If you've spent years telling yourself she just has responsive desire, so you're going to do what you think a good husband should do. You're going to be patient. You're going to work on yourself. You're going to try harder. You're going to improve communication, control your reactions, lower your expectations. Now, I'm all for working on yourself. I'm all for improving communications. I'm totally for controlling your emotional reactions. But this is people-pleasing. This is giving to get. You are doing these in hopes of she will provide initiation. She will provide desire. So when you do all of these things and nothing changes, no touch, no pursuit, no affection, no desire coming your way, what changed? Nothing. Well, you changed. You became now more self-doubting. Now you become more ashamed of wanting sex. You become more anxious. The difference between responsive desire and avoidance is that responsive desire, it explains how desire turns on. Avoidant attachment explains why it stays off. Do you see the difference? Avoidant partners avoid the exposure. A responsive desire partner, they may not be proactive, but they welcome it. They don't see it as obligation. They're open. They love having sex with their partner. They love the connection. They're just not very good at starting the ball rolling. An avoidant partner wants to do what they can to avoid it. To avoid sex, especially initiation, that's exposure. Initiating sex means risking rejection, being seen as wanting, losing control. And for a dismissive avoidant, that feels unsafe. The pattern becomes, yeah, you can want me, you can come to me, but I'm not going to come to you. Do you see that now there's no openness? Responsive desire, openness. Dismissive avoidance, there's not openness. That's the difference. Avoidant partners, they still want the marriage, and this is why we go crazy, and this confuses the daylights out of us. If she doesn't want sex, she doesn't initiate, she avoids intimacy, why does she freak out at the idea of divorce? Because if you're like most guys in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, you've either thought about it, talked about it, hinted about it, threatened it. You've brought the D word up somewhere. Why does she freak out? If she supposedly doesn't want you, avoidant attachment, it's not about wanting connection. It's about wanting connection without vulnerability. It's a capacity thing. The marriage provides stability and companionship, financial safety, structure, co-parenting. Sex threatens that structure because now all of a sudden mutual desire, emotional exposure, unpredictability. When you withdraw, or if you come forward and name your need, you think you're being honest, but she registers that as danger, threat, vulnerability. It's a capacity thing. I don't think it's she won't. I talked about this in the previous podcast. She can't. And the result is the husband is starving. You're starving. And then, to make it worse, what's really damaging is then you're told you're needy. You're pressuring her. You're killing desire. No one asks the question, what happens if I stop? If I stop initiating? If I stop bridging the gap? If I stop compensating? What will happen? You know the answer. Nothing. No affection. No warmth. No movement toward you at all. That tells you something critical. A responsive desire partner, true responsive desire, will still want you. They're just not good at initiating. The dismissive avoidant partner doesn't want any of that. And it's not just about sex. I mean, men don't want initiation because they're obsessed with sex. I mean, most men. I mean, there are some sex addicts, but you want it because it says, I want you, husband. I choose you, husband. You don't have to earn this. When initiation disappears entirely, the body can feel it. That inner child inside feels that pain, just like that pain when he was little, and he couldn't get that affection from a parent or caregiver. He had to earn it. And no amount of hustle is going to override that truth. And this dynamic just crushes men over time. He learns to suppress that desire, to constantly monitor her mood. Earn affection. Work harder, try harder. Put it all on your shoulders. Fear honesty. Doubt yourself. You become hypervigilant now, and you're reading the room all the time. And you're asking yourself, what is wrong with me? And you're trying to fix this and fix that. And I can't fix my wife, so I'm going to fix me. And again, nothing wrong with self-improvement. But you get to a point where you're doing all these things and nothing changes. And you're still asking yourself that question. What is wrong with me? Nothing. What's wrong is that you're living in a system where your needs exist only if you perform correctly. And even then, it's not a guarantee. That's not responsive desire. Openness. It's about openness. The question's not, can I accept responsive desire? Because if you truly had just responsive desire, you wouldn't feel empty. She would be there. She would be filling your cup. She'd be wanting you. She craves you. She's just not good at initiating. The real question here, is there desire here at all once I stop carrying it? That comes from observation. You just have to notice. And yeah, that clarity feels painful. That clarity often feels worse before it feels better because clarity removes this idea of hope through effort. And for anxious men, effort has always been how we survived. We were just one book away from finding the answer, one podcast away from finding the answer, one couples counseling session away from opening her up. Clarity is also the end of self-abandonment. I talked about that previously. And this is not about shaming or blaming avoidant partners, but it is about telling men the truth. You're not broken for wanting to be wanted. You're not immature for needing desire. You are not to be shamed for wanting sex with your partner. You're not wrong for noticing what's missing. Yeah, responsive desire is real, but it's about openness. Dismissive avoidance is not openness. It does explain why you can have one-sided intimacy for years, sometimes decades. Desire doesn't have to be this constant thing, but it does have to exist. And the key word there is desire. In responsive desire, the desire is there. With dismissive avoidance, it's not. If the only place that desire lives is inside of you, that's a truth problem. So just understand the difference between what you may be going through with your dismissive avoidant spouse and what true responsive desire is. Responsive desire is not a BS term to make excuses for a one-sided relationship. Responsive desire is real. When you think responsive desire, think openness. If you're not seeing openness, then you don't have responsive desire. I hope that clarified some things for you. Hope this podcast was helpful for you. Always try to give you information that you can take with you. If you think this podcast might help somebody out, share this episode with a friend who may need to hear this. Subscribe if you don't already. Would you give me a review if you're a regular listener to this podcast and this helps you? Would you go and give me a review? That helps other men find this and heal. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you need accountability, if you need somebody to help you manage this whole complexity of responsive desire, dismissive avoidance, reach out, securehusband.com, fill out that form for a free 30-minute consultation. Just a conversation to see if one-on-one coaching can help you stay accountable. And I'll see you on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.